In Chapter 2, we're going to talk about theoretical perspectives and motor development. Motor development. What happens from a baby to a toddler? Well, there's theories of motor development. There's maturational perspective, informational processing perspective, and ecological perspective. The maturational perspective, here's some points. Motor development is driven by maturation of systems, by nature, specifically the central nervous system or the CNS. There's minimal influence of the environment, and the characteristics of motor development are qualitative and discontinuous. The history of this process and perspective was McGraw in the 1930s is the one who developed this theory. He suggested invariable genetically determined sequence of development. Individuals can have unique timing, and he did some research that it goes into detail in your reading about the co-twin control strategy. The co-twin control design has been widely used in studying the effects of environmental factors on the development of diseases. For binary outcomes that arise from co-twin control studies, the conditional likelihood method is commonly used. This approach, however, does not readily extend to ordinal response data because the standard conditional likelihood does not exist for cumulative logic or proportional odd models. So the co-twin control design is a powerful research methodology for studying the effects of environmental risks on the development of diseases. The research design may take either of two forms, a cohort or case control. In a cohort, co-twin controls, exposure discordant twins are followed for the developmental of disease. In the case study or case control study, disease disordant pairs are examined for differences in antecedent exposures. So in 1935, McGraw associated motor behavior changes with development of nervous system. And he also proposed that advancement in central nervous system triggers appearance of a new skill. The long-lasting beliefs from this theory are basic motor skills emerge automatically. There's no need for special training. Mild deprivation does not arrest development, and the nervous system is not the nervous system is the most important for development. Then you have the descriptive methodology in motor development. It's the characteristic of maturation perspective. It was used from 1940s to the 1970s. Normative use of qualitative scores to describe a children's average performance. There's also biomechanical, which is the use of biochemical descriptions of movement patterns and fundamental skills. How would a maturation theorist explain the following? A toddler walking, a child riding a bike, a teenager having difficult swimming. Then there's the information process perspective. Motor development driven by external processes. The nurture part. Basic tenet, brain acts like a computer, the passive human response to stimuli in the environment. Important concepts are input, encoding, processing, and feedback. Young adults often studied first as basis of comparison for performance of children and older adults. The perceptual motor development. The subfield exists within the framework of the information processing. Early work in the 1960s tried to link learning disabilities to delayed perceptual motor development. How would an information processing theorist explain the following? Answer these questions. You may have to look it up in your reading, but a toddler learning to walk, child riding a bike, or a teenager having difficulty swimming. Then there's the ecological perspective, development driven by interrelationship of individual, environment, and task. It's the importance of multiple systems. The neural system is one of many responsible for the action. There's two branches, dynamical systems, perception, action. The dynamical systems theory was advocated in the early 1980s by Kluger, Kelso, and Turvey. So body systems are spontaneously self-organized. They're not driven solely by the central nervous system. The body systems, performer's environment, and task demands interact. Some systems may develop more slowly in the young or degrade faster in the old and thus control change or rate of development. Development is characterized by qualitative and discontinuous change, and the change occurs across the lifespan. Here's a graph explaining dynamical systems. Perception to action. This theory is based on the work of Gibson in the 1960s. Affordance is the function an environmental object provides to an individual. So characteristics define objects' meanings. Object functions are based on individuals' intrinsic dimensions. Examples are body scaled, rather than objects extrinsic or objects of dimension. So it's inside versus the outside. The ecological perspective. Both branches reject the central nervous system as executive controller of nearly limitless opportunities for movement. Control is distributed throughout the body at both a global and local level. This challenging perspective allows for new types of experiments and new ways of thinking about old questions. How would an ecological perspective theorist explain the following? Toddler learning to walk, a child riding a bike, or teenagers having difficulty swimming. Here's a summary of this chapter. Number 1, different theoretical perspectives of motor development have emerged over time. Although each perspective is unique, there are often benefits to viewing motor development from different perspectives. And the maturational perspective has had a lasting impact on how changes in motor development occurs. However, the ecological perspective is now more widely used by researchers. So what do you think? Nature or nurture?